Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Todd Klindt's SharePoint Netcast number 174, recorded live, of course, October 1st, Monday, October 21st, 2013. I am your host and box office superstar, Todd Klindt, and all of this around me, this fine wardrobe, my SharePoint Rackspace shirt, everything, the microphone, the flag, all of it, couldn't be possible without the fine folks at Rackspace. They even gave me the mug that I'm using to prop up my microphone wire here to keep it off my keyboard. They thought of everything. So do them a solid. Head on over to sharepoint.rackspace.com and see what they got going on there. One of the things that, so we got a guy named Justin. I know some of you guys that were at SharePoint Saturday Atlanta this last time got to meet Justin. He's pretty, but he still does a good job. Don't hold that against him. He is our marketing guy, and one of the things that's on Justin's to-do list is to keep that SharePoint.rackspace.com website fresh and add new things all the time. So even if you went there last week, go ahead and go there next week. Check out SharePoint.rackspace.com, and if you want to do me a solid, click the link off of one of my blog posts so he sees those refers, so he thinks I'm a big deal, because I keep telling him I'm a big deal. He doesn't seem to buy it. But check that out. There are all kinds of good stuff. There's free videos and links to training and where we're going to be and all kinds of stuff. So check that out at SharePoint.rackspace.com. So we're getting some questions in the chat room. If this is a Captain America t-shirt, it's not, though I could totally rock a Captain America t-shirt. It is a, so we gave these out at a conference. I don't remember when, SP TechCon maybe. The real reason that I'm wearing it is, of course, so I used to wear SharePoint related shirts all the time, and then I kind of ran out of them, so then I started wearing boring shirts, and somebody actually called me on it and said, hey, how come you're wearing, like, so I decided this week I was going to wear a SharePoint shirt, and then our washing machine broke down, and this was the only one that was clean, so that's why I'm wearing it. But I would totally rock a Captain America shirt and shield if I had one here. All right, so next we'll go on to our production notes. I think production-wise, everything is been going well, other than just me putting everything together. So I think the audio's been well, as good as can be given, given the thing. And the people in the chat room are mentioning how much better I'd look with a mask too. Thanks, folks. Really, I'm right here. Where was I before I had my my self-esteem destroyed? Oh yeah, so the audio and all that's been working pretty well. The video's been going pretty well, getting everything rendered out. Been adding a lot of lower thirds and all that kind of stuff, and got the intro, and it's all been so I think those things have been pretty good. One of the side effects, though, of all the lower thirds with the links and stuff, and I don't know if anybody's using those, honestly. I should not put them in once and see what happens, but that just takes a lot longer for me to edit. So one of the downfalls of all this is that it takes me longer to get the blog posts out, get the RSS feeds out, and all that stuff. But other than that, production's looking good, I think. The aforementioned Justin, one of his tasks, I think, is we're going to redo the introduction. So look for that. My intro screen. He and I bounced some ideas around last week, and hopefully we'll have something in the next couple of months, and we'll get that going. Also, another thing, last year. And I mentioned this because Lynn Dies in the chat room, and her and I got to hang out last year at a conference called NMX, the New Media Expo, and I think the URL is like nmxlive.com or something. But it is a conference for like bloggers and netcasters and all that. It's really not for computer nerds, but there happened to be a lot of computer nerds there, and I happened to be there. But I got a lot of ideas, like publishing this thing on YouTube is directly from that, and some other things. Got some great ideas. So I'm going to try to go back to NMX next year. It's going to be in January in Vegas. I'm going to try to drag Justin with me to get some more ideas, because I think we've gotten some good stuff out of this. We've got some other good video things. Laura and Steven and those guys do the SharePoint Power Hour Wednesday mornings at 11 Central. So just a lot of good stuff like that. So hopefully I'll get to go to that. We'll get some other great ideas. But the production, I think, has been going pretty well. As always, I invite any critiques other than, get a new host, because our budget barely covers me as a host and I work for nothing. So we can't do much better than that. So we'll get on to the topics. It was funny. I wasn't sure that I was going to have anything to talk about tonight, but then I found a whole bunch of cool stuff to talk about. So hopefully this one will be a good one. So last week I sort of alluded to this. I talked about how I use PowerShell to extract some managed properties and some crawled properties, but I didn't say why. And so this week we get to hear the why, because when I talked to you guys Monday night when I recorded this, I hadn't gotten a chance to check my solution for that problem. So I did that Tuesday morning and everything worked. So since we're coming up on Halloween, I think this is a great story on a great scary tale of a customer that did everything right and still had lots and lots of problems. So I think I wish I could do the lighting where, like, the flashlight. I got a flashlight on my desk here. The flashlight was coming from up under my face, and it was all scary. Boo. Kind of like one of those ghost stories. So we had this customer, been a customer of ours for a couple of years. I'm very friendly with them. And first, let's talk about what they did right. So they had me install SharePoint for them. Okay, that might have been questionable, but we installed SharePoint 2010 for them at a fairly recent patch level. Not too aggressively recent, but responsibly recent. They did that well. They had a D drive on their SharePoint server, and they moved stuff like search and their logs and all that kind of stuff off onto their D drive, which was good. I applaud that. Their D drive and their C drives were all redundant and all that kind of stuff, RAID 5 and all that. They were their SQL was on another server, so they'd split that out. That was good. And everything was being backed up, and being backed up well. I mean, and we'll come to that later, but it wasn't one of those things where they set up a backup job and never tested it. Everything was good. They did all of that right. And then it was a dark and stormy night, and the D drive failed. Dun, dun, dun. So for whatever reason, and I don't remember the mechanics of the back end because I wasn't involved with all that, but their D drive failed. So of course we had, IIS logs and SharePoint logs and search and all that kind of stuff on the D drive. That all went kaput. They went away, but they didn't panic. They were pretty good. They got the hardware back online, whatever the time frame was for that, and got everything back up and going. And with their backup software, they restored all of their D drive stuff. And they had a pretty recent restore. I think when I talked to the guy, he thought they lost maybe 2 hours worth of stuff. That's pretty good. That's way better than I could ever do on any of my stuff. So they did all that right. And everything seemed to be going well. SharePoint seemed to be happy. Or did it? So what they found was that everything worked fine in SharePoint except search. Pages rendered, people could add things they were able to add, site collections, everything worked fine until anybody tried to do anything search related. They couldn't run any queries. Whenever they would run a query, they would get this nasty stack trace error page thing. So they went in and tried to do some management in search and couldn't manage it. There was all about just crazy errors. Doug in the chat room is asking about the SharePoint search indexes. I will get to that later, but that was all fine. They couldn't delete search. They tried to manage search, couldn't do it, and they went into Central Admin and tried to delete the search service app. They couldn't. Again, crazy errors. And so they thought, wow, they had to pull out the big guns. They tried to delete their search service app with PowerShell. Couldn't get that done either. And that's then things really got ugly. And that's when they sounded the klaxon. They called me up and got me up to speed on the story. So I verified all the things that they looked at. I started digging into their ULS logs and their event logs, and they were getting some really weird errors and a lot of errors, like more than usual, more than just the errors. Now, when they sent the ticket in and all that kind of stuff, I didn't know the whole backstory. So like Doug, I was thinking, oh yeah, this is obvious. The databases didn't get deleted, the indexes did. When they got restored, there's just no way to restore those two in sync. Flush the index and you're fine. I'll be off this phone call in 7 minutes. It was obviously far, far worse than that. So got in there, did some searching, and was getting some weird errors. One of the errors that I was getting was a gatherer error, which is the gatherer is the thing that goes out and does your crawling, and was getting some random errors about could not load assembly, but it wouldn't tell me what assembly it couldn't load, because that would be too much help. So I mean, I knew where, I knew how they had their stuff laid up because I had installed all. So I went out to the D drive and, D program files, Office servers, 14, blah, blah, blah. Looked at all that. It looked fine. Then I actually broke down and got a SharePoint 2010 server that did work and started comparing things, comparing directories. Everything looked fine, except it didn't work. It was it was real crazy. So I was going through, I was making sure that assemblies were registered in the GAC, not that the GAC had been touched, but any of that kind of stuff. So it was really a tough one. So I was on IM and I saw Trevor Seward, which I was hoping he was in the chat room tonight, but I saw on Facebook or whatever today that he's sick. I was kind of telling Trevor about this, and he asked me if I had used Procmon to try to troubleshoot some of these can't load assembly issues. So Procmon is short for Process Monitor. And that is sysinternal's tool from Microsoft. That's from sysinternal's, the Mark Rusinovich company that Microsoft bought. And Process Monitor just gives you a running monitor of all the files and registry keys that are being opened. Successes and failures, every little minutia of what Windows is doing. It's pretty overwhelming. But when looking for these random, can't load assembly errors, that's a really great place to look and see which assembly it can't load. So I did that. Sadly, it took me about 20 minutes. I mean, just as you can imagine, information just flies by. So trying to filter things out, finally saw what the problem was. The gatherer, again, that's the part that does the indexing and the crawling and all that. That's something that's been part of the Microsoft suite of products since NT4. And it came into like the IIS Power Pack or something. I forget what it was. It was the first search thing. So apparently inside of this whole SharePoint search gatherer is some really old code that doesn't understand long file names. So all of the search binaries were in D, program files, Office servers, 14, bin. I forget the whole path. But there was code that was trying to load some of those assemblies up, and it was trying to load it as D:\progra tilde 2 / micros tilde 1 / so on and so forth, because it was using those generated short names instead of the long file names. So I said, okay, well, that's fine. That should work. But I went out to a command prompt and I did a dir progra1 or progra2 / and it wasn't Microsoft Office servers. It wasn't D program files Microsoft Office servers. It was D program files Microsoft SQL Server. So they had installed some SQL bits. They had also done the wise thing and installed those on the D drive. But when the server was installed, they installed the SQL part first, so when the OS, or I guess the file system more specifically, generated the short file name, it got progra tilde 1 because it was first. When Microsoft laid down its directory, it got progra tilde 2. Okay, so that pra tilde 2 got saved somewhere inside of SharePoint because of this legacy code. When the backup software restored all the files, and it did a fantastic job, it wrote them back in alphabetical order, and Microsoft Office Server is alphabetically before SQL Server, and so Office Server got progra 1 and SQL Server got progra 2. Holy cow. So I was able to confirm that. I grabbed the 14 directory from progra 1, copied it into progra 2, and it was like 700 meg, and as soon as I did that, all the assembly errors went away. So that was very clearly what had been the problem. So at that point, I talked to the customer and I said, okay, I know what the problem is. I know what I don't even want to call this a workaround, but like a Band-Aid is. But what I don't know is what the long-term solution is, because we can't, I know what the solution, what the mechanics of the problem are, but I just need a minute. 'Cause I'm telling you, this was crazy. And I spent, I think the whole call that afternoon was like 2.5 hours. It was just pretty crazy. So I'm like, I need some time to think about that, to figure out what to do. So got them up and going so that at least, things wouldn't error up and all that. So we'll talk about the bug piece in a minute, because they're chatting about bugs in the back room. So in my head, I'm like, well, all the databases are in the SQL Server, which is untouched. So if we uninstall SharePoint and delete those folders and then reinstall SharePoint, it will recreate them, hopefully in the correct order, but more importantly, it will create them in a way that it understands. Attach the databases will be fine. So that was kind of my working idea. And then I was kind of, part of me was super proud that I figured out what the problem was, but part of me was really embarrassed that I didn't have a solution. So I was kind of chatting with some other friends of mine and kind of talking the problem out and came upon another solution. Instead of deleting the folders, rename them. But more importantly, rename the beginning of the folder. And just to recap, SharePoint was looking for the Microsoft Office server in Progra ~1, but it had been, or ~2, but it had been written in the reverse order, so it was Program 1. So what I did was I renamed the folders temp, program files, whatever, or program files, and then renamed them back in the correct order so they got the correct short names, rebooted the box, and then it all worked. Now, it all worked is relative because the troubleshooting process that led me up to that, I did some horrendous things to SharePoint search, trying to figure that whole thing out. But was then able to delete the search service app that I'd been unable to delete before, was able to create a new search service app, was able to do queries, everything worked after that. So I've already spent like 15 minutes talking about this. So two morals to take away from this. Don't forget about short file names, though it's nearly 2014. I can't believe that that's still an issue, but just keep in mind that search uses that. The other thing is don't forget great tools like Procmon. So had I used Procmon more often, I would have probably come up on that sooner. But I've used Procmon probably 3 times-ish in the last 6 months, and it's a great tool. It just right down to the nuts and bolts. It's a good tool for find all these things. And I had another tool. I wasn't able to get that one of those folders renamed right away, and I had to use an unlocker tool that told me what process had it locked. But it was all good. So in the chat room, Eric and Doug were talking about whether this is a bug or not. I'm torn on that. Again, it's 2013, and I just can't hold it against backup software for not checking that, I guess. Because I guess what the backup software could have done is it could have looked at all of the short file names and then made sure that it restored them in order of short file name instead of alphabetical order. But man, I really can't get mad at the backup software for not doing that. I would love to, but I just can't. In my head, this is a deficiency of SharePoint search. There's just some code in there that's legacy code that needs to be updated. I feel like this falls on SharePoint 2010. Now, I have not tried to reproduce this in SharePoint 2013. I don't know. Search got a huge rewrite in 2013. I don't know if it falls for the same short file name gag or not. But this is one of those. After I got about 30 minutes into this call, I was like, I want nothing to do with this. I want nothing to do with this. But then, 2 hours later, once I'd figured it out, I'm like, yeah, this stuff's fun. I love this. So it was just funny. But yeah, it was a tough one. But now they're back, and again, the moral of the story is use Procmon. And I guess the other moral of the story is it would have taken me significantly longer to figure all that out if it hadn't have been from the help from a couple of folks. So it's always good. I truly believe in good karma. If you're good to other people will be good to you. And it just kind of came back. So that was my big story. And that was the thing that I was talking about last week with the whole backing up the managed properties and crawled properties. This was the thing that was doing. I wanted to try to get those out before I destroyed search, because I could still do that. Okay. So another thing, way back, I don't remember how long ago, a year ago, 6 months ago, 10 years ago, I forget when it was, on this Netcast I used to have the PowerShell tip of the week. And that kind of fell by the wayside. I'm terrible at judging what other people know, and it just feels like everything that I know about PowerShell, everybody else already knows. And so the PowerShell tip of the week kind of fell by the wayside because I just didn't figure I had anything valuable to give. So I just kind of forgot about it. But then at work, one of the folks at work said, "Hey, every Friday we should send out PowerShell tips of the week." And I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty good time. I should do that. So I've been forced now. I got some folks that are in earlier time zones than me that are on my team. And so I get up Friday morning and I see their PowerShell tip of the week. And I'm like, son of a, the gauntlet's been thrown down. So you guys have gotten a couple of those. The Hey Scripting Guy post that I have coming up was one of those. I did the where object thing was one of those. You guys have been reaping the benefits of that ego-driven contest at Rackspace. So this next thing is another one of those. So as with most things that you can do in your command prompts, there's usually a better, though slightly wordier and tougher way to do it in PowerShell, and ping is no exception. Ping has a very good PowerShell counterpoint called test connection. And that was a bad paste. Let me clean that up. And so test connection is essentially ping that we're all used to, except because it's part of PowerShell, it's better. It's just better. More specifically, it deals with objects and it understands pipelines, so you can do all kinds of crazy stuff with test connection that you just couldn't ever do with ping. Things like you can pipe machine names into test connection. You can take the output from test connection and make decisions based on it and do stuff based on it. You can start a bunch of pings on a bunch of boxes. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff because it's a commandlet. So it's got all that functionality. It's got the pipeline. It's got looping. It's got all that. So I know that ping is 4 letters, and I know that test connection is more than 4 letters. Excuse me, but let's not forget that you've got tab complete and all that. So to give you kind of an idea what I did, I rebooted a lot of servers. SharePoint loves getting rebooted. And so just a snippet that I wrote, and I may blog this, we'll see. But I just created a loop, and I just said while true, so that it just kept going through forever. And then I put an if thing around test connection, and I said test connection, machine name, count 1, and then error action, silently continue. So I don't want red bleeding on the screen, but I do want the output object from that. And then what I did was I took that output and I put some stuff in there, and I said, because it was instead of an if loop, so I say if the test connection came back true or positive, or the machine responded, then in green text, because you can do that easily in PowerShell, say up, and if it didn't come back, then in red text say down, sleep for 5 seconds. So just this rotating thing, but you can do it. You can make, so that was just kind of a proof of concept in my head, though for Friday I had to get that out before it was still Friday. What my plan was, one of the things that happens, and I don't know, happens to you a lot, is I'll have to reboot a machine. So I'll reboot the machine, and then I'll want to walk off and do something, refill my coffee or go pet the cat or work on my washing machine, whatever. And so when I leave, the pings are coming. And when I get back, the pings are coming. But what I don't know is whether they ever went away in the middle, if the machine ever went down. So in my head, at some point, I'm going to write a PowerShell script that waits for the machine to go down. And then instead of saying up, 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 down, says machine went down at blah, and then gives the time, and then machine came back up at blah, and so that I can come back and without seeing a screen full of pings say, oh yeah, it says it went down here and it came back up a couple minutes later. So that's ultimately what my goal will be, but I didn't have time Friday to write all that. Doug saying the trick is to never reboot your machine. You haven't gotten bitten by short file names lately, have you? But that was this week's PowerShell tip of the week. So, yeah, so Jack in the chat room is saying that he wrote the exact same thing in VB. It would be immensely handy if that existed, because just the pings alone aren't enough. I need to know that it actually shut down or actually rebooted. Okay. So Mark in the chat room is saying, are there event log entries for that? There are. That's a gigantic pain to look through, though. But yes, they are in there. Okay, so next topic, and I can't believe I almost forgot to talk about this one. Last week, a day early, Windows 8.1 came out, so everybody rushed out and upgraded all their Windows 8 devices. So, if you have a Windows 8 device, if it's a Surface device or anything else, you can go to the Microsoft Store. You can do a search. It should just show up, but you can do a search. And the 8.1 upgrade is just a download, just a patch, and you can download it. So there's good news and bad news. The good news is that 8.1 is officially out now. Everybody can get it. The bad news is now I can no longer lord over people that I have 8.1 and they don't. You know. So, but that is out now. I've got a bunch of 8.80 machines. Everything worked pretty well. You may have a problem when you go to the store. Probably not today. Last week it was a huge problem that your machine didn't show you that the upgrade was available. There's a quick link to that. I wish I'd had it in my notes, but I'll put it in my the show notes. Of course, I did it when 95% of the Windows 8 owning world did it, and it took me a little over an hour for my RT device because I'd already done my regular boxes, but my RT device took a little longer just because everybody else was doing it. I had to reboot a few times. So far, no problems, though interestingly, Microsoft did remove the Windows RT 8.1 upgrade. Apparently there were a few, and it's always a few, right? It's never a massive problem. A few Surface RT devices got bricked during the upgrade. Bricked with a B, that's bad. So that's particularly bad. Now, normally with the Surface devices, you can make a recovery thing, a recovery key, and boot to it. But some folks didn't do that. And I understand, I don't normally do it either. But then the problem was, since this is an ARM-based device, they can't boot it to make the recovery thing, but they can't make it anywhere else because they don't have any other RT devices. So in a stunning move today, Microsoft released the 8.0 recovery software for RT so that you could make an 8.0 recovery key, USB key, and then unbrick your RT devices. So I don't know when that RT upgrade will be back out. Fortunately, like I said, I got it before it went away, and I had no problems. This right here, this is running on my Surface RT, working like a champ. But if you've got any Windows 8 Pro devices, go ahead and upgrade them. It's been pretty good. It's interesting now. You can tell that they really took to heart a lot of the UI complaints that they got, because there's things like videos now, and you actually have to swipe from one side to the other. They got the arrow that lets you know where the rest of the programs are at. It's just all good stuff. As you can imagine, I frequent a lot of tech forums, and there was a person in there that was saying, I don't get the start button. The start button is worthless to me. If you've got a Windows key on your keyboard, you don't need the start button. If you've got a Windows key on your tablet, you don't need a start button. This is just dumb. Why is the start button back? Blah. I'm a big hater. He said all that. So there's a bunch of reasons. When Windows 8 and, of course, Windows Server 2012 came out, it was tough to use. And I do a lot of virtualization. I do a lot of remote desktop, that kind of stuff. And not everything captured the Windows key correctly. You couldn't get everything through. That's mostly been fixed if you're using new clients and stuff like that. But I discovered another issue today. I was working with a different client. They have Windows Server 2012, and I was on the desktop. I tried to get back to the start screen to run something. I couldn't send the Windows key through GoToMeeting because that's how we talk to our customers. So had they had Windows 2012 R2, of course it wouldn't have supported SharePoint. That's a different story entirely, but I could have just clicked the start button. So, but if the start button is there now, it's not a start menu, And if you right click on it, shutdown is one of those options now, which is nice. But if you've got Windows 8, I highly recommend the 8.1 upgrade. A lot of great things. As far as I know, it doesn't really break anything, but it's treated me quite well. Okay, so now I'm going to do something I don't normally do. Normally I don't talk about blog posts until I actually post them, but I'm dragging my feet on a couple of blog posts, so I'm going to tell you guys about them to keep me honest. The first one that I'm working on, and hopefully the first one that will come out, is a blog post on the proper way to install SQL for SharePoint. Now this will be for SharePoint 2013, though it will mostly be the same for SharePoint 2010. And basically just going to walk you through the steps from the point where you create all your accounts to the time that you get done and start installing SharePoint, on how to get SQL installed. And we're talking about things like limiting RAM and what drives to put stuff on and all that kind of stuff. So the outline is written. I mean, that part is all done. I always do everything on an outline. The outline is written. The blog is about 50% done. I had a problem that I was having with my screenshots. So one of the things that I was inspired to do by going to the SharePoint and Exchange forum in Sweden last month, or this month, is to record demos. So if you remember when I went over there for my install session, I recorded all my demos instead of trying to do them live. It went over really well. It took a lot of stress off me. The internet couldn't bite me. My laptop couldn't overheat. Everybody was happy. There was much cheering on the boat. It was great. So I thought, you know, for this SQL blog post, it would be awesome if, along with having all this stuff and having all the screenshots, I just had a video of me doing it. So I've actually already recorded the video and already put the voice narration down, the voice track as we call it in the biz. So that video, that 27 minutes, is done. But then what I decided to do was, instead of taking screenshots of the process, I would just grab frames out of that video. And so I had some problems getting those frames grabbed out, but I've got that figured out now. So the blog is about 50% written. So hopefully I'll have that done in the next couple of days, but that'll be a big, huge, giant blog post on how to install SQL, hopefully answering every question. I've had a couple of people go over my outline and watch the video and kind of help me tighten the story up a little bit. So hopefully that will be done by the end of the week, and we'll answer all the questions on how to install SQL for SharePoint. If I don't have that done next week, call me to task on it. Ask me where it's at. One of the things that I discovered while I was doing that is that there's a new version of SnagIt out. So SnagIt is one of the 2 video editing tools that I use a lot. That you can get it at TechSmith.com. And SnagIt is essentially a replacement for print screen and a replacement for the snipping tool that came in Windows Vista and all that. So I remember back in the day, and SnagIt has been out forever. And I mean, I don't exaggerate, 15 years maybe. And I remember the first time a friend of mine had SnagIt, and SnagIt costs like $50 or something like that, or $30, I forget. I remember making fun of my friend and say, "You just paid $30 for print screen? Oh my God, you were an idiot." And I remember thinking that guy was an idiot for years. And then when I became an MVP 8 years ago or whatever, TechSmith is one of the companies that gives MVPs free stuff, because they know that MVPs have big mouths. We just physically cannot shut up. And so they're hoping if they give a couple of MVPs some software like SnagIt, and we like it, we'll tell people. And so here we are. So I got SnagIt because it was free, and I installed it. And oh my God, is it awesome? I would absolutely, if tomorrow when well, I guess I did it this morning, but if this morning when I emailed TechSmith and said, "Hey, can I get a key for the new version of SnagIt?" If they said, "No, we don't do that anymore," I would have happily sent them however much money they wanted for SnagIt. So SnagIt does screen captures. It also does video capture. As a matter of fact, when I recorded my SQL demo, when you guys watched that video, it was all recorded in SnagIt. It also does text capture, so you can capture a screen full of text, and SnagIt will turn that into words. It will essentially OCR it for you. We'll do all kinds of crazy stuff. You can do irregular shapes and all that kind of stuff. But that's only half of what's great. So SnagIt does all the capturing, and you can capture it to 100 places, save it to a file, send it an email, upload it to an FTP server, just ridiculous stuff. But that's only half of it. The other half is SnagIt comes with an editor. And so after you snag your image, you can optionally have it come up with an editor. Oh yeah, the web page is scrolling. I forgot that. Jeff brings up an interesting thing. So one of the things that SnagIt can do is you can capture a web page and tell SnagIt to scroll the web page, because how many of us have done that? Print screen, scroll, print screen, scroll, print screen, scroll. With SnagIt, you can tell it to scroll all the way down, and then you can also tell it to maintain the links, so you can do a screenshot of a web page. It'll save it out as a PDF and have hot links on it. So it's way crazy. Love it. But then after you get all that stuff captured, SnagIt comes with this outstanding editor. So if you've ever seen any of my blog posts, if they have the ragged edges on the screenshots or the arrows or all that kind of stuff, that's all the SnagIt editor. It is amazing stuff. So the people in the chat room, it's funny, they're asking if I have any discount codes. I actually do, but I have no idea where they're at. So when I was at TechEd in Madrid, I went to the TechSmith booth, and they are every bit as friendly as their software is great. And they gave me some free codes to give out, and I've lost them. So I'll have to look and see if I can find those. But they gave me a code for SnagIt and Camtasia. I forget. So big fan of SnagIt. They're saying in the chat room it's $50. You absolutely will feel stupid paying $50 for print screen. You will absolutely hate it, and you'll enter it in, and you'll be like, oh, that Todd Klindt, he's a moron, and you'll do it, and then you'll use SnagIt for about 5 minutes, and then you'll hate yourself for not having bought it 10 years ago. I promise. It's awesome. It's got all kinds of graphics, and it's amazing. So big loving on SnagIt, but a new version of that came out, and I realized that today when I was doing some stuff. So version 11. So go out there, buy you some SnagIt. It's good stuff. And I'll see if I can find some codes and do some kind of a contest or something. I know I've got them somewhere. They're somewhere. In the chat room, Jim asked if SnagIt does video. Do you still need Camtasia? Yeah, so Camtasia does the video editing. So when I did the SQL installation bit, I captured the video in SnagIt, and I could have done some rudimentary like cutting pieces out, I think, in SnagIt. But then I took the SnagIt captured video and brought it into Camtasia, and that's where I sped everything up and all that kind of stuff. So yes, you need Camtasia for the editing. And then Jim's asking, how does the video capture in SnagIt compare to Camtasia? You know, I don't know, because I haven't captured video in Camtasia for a while. I used to do this Netcast. I used to capture it in Camtasia, and then had some issues. Not Camtasia's fault, laptop fault, and I just don't do it anymore. But that's something, I don't know. SnagIt, it's right there. I just hit the print screen, it comes up. Big fan though. All right, last topic. Another blog thing that I've been dragging my feet on, so I'm telling you guys, so you hold my feet to the fire, is adding the Office Web Apps versions to my SharePoint 2013 builds blog post. So that's something I've always wanted to do. I've got the SharePoint 2013 versions up top, and then I mean to add the Office Web Apps and maybe Workflow below those. I just never done it because those versions are so tough to track. But I've got all the Office Web Apps stuff down. I think I've got it all in the right format. So I just need to get in there and edit that. So, but hopefully that'll be a value to some people looking for Office Web App links, stuff like that. So I'll be getting those builds in there. All right. So there's a lot of great spirited discussion in the chat room about tools. So some folks are using the OneNote tool. OneNote has a very similar capture tool. I don't like it as much as SnagIt. I used it a little bit, and I'll be honest with you. I had used SnagIt first, and so the OneNote thing kind of had to be better to get my attention, and it was not. Windows 7 and Windows Vista, and probably Windows 8, have a built-in snipping tool. It is absolutely not nearly as full-featured as SnagIt. Well, and somebody else brought it, so SharePoint, Madam brings up an interesting thing. SnagIt has a 30-day trial, so you can go out to TechSmith.com, download SnagIt, 30 days, try it out, fall in love with it, buy it. You can thank me. It's okay. But a great tool. So there we go. All right. So now we're done with the topics. So now the self-promotion part, not a lot of big changes. Of course, we got the book, Professional SharePoint 2013 Administration. Doing great, loving it. Been watching. A bunch of you folks are still buying it. And I see it on my blog post. I'm using my Amazon referrer link. Every month I see some folks are buying it, so I appreciate all that. If you want to buy a copy from me, you can go to the top of my blog and click the link, and you can buy one directly from me, and I'll autograph it and write naughty things about Shane in it. Once again, on November 9th, I'm going to have a guest blog on the Hey Scripting Guy blog, and that's the Microsoft scripting website. Ed Wilson runs it. I can't believe that he finds my PowerShell worthy to be on his blog, but he does, and if he offers, I'm going to take him up on it. So that's here in a couple weeks on November 9th. I will be doing a pre-conference session at the SharePoint conference. A little thing, a little ditty, maybe you've heard of it, out in Las Vegas. You can go to SharePointConference.com. And I'll be doing a pre-conference session. Shane and I will be on installation, admin type stuff. So you can sign up for that. They have put the price out there now. The conference is $2,000, $19, whatever, $2,000. They're not fooling anybody. So the conference is $2,000. Shane and I's session, the pre-conference session, is $400 on top of that. So I know that's a lot, but it's like $50 an hour. But then you get Shane and I, so it's really like $25 an hour for each, that kind of stuff. So go to that. And then SP TechCon is in April. So the SharePoint conference is in March 3rd through the 5th or something. SP TechCon is in San Francisco, and that is April 22nd to the 25th. So I'll be out there. Don't remember what sessions I've got going there, but we'll be out there as well. So thanks, everybody. Once again, my half-an-hour show turned into 42 minutes. I apologize. I get excited about these topics. I just can't stop. So thanks, everybody. Hopefully next week I'll have some blog posts to talk about. Don't be afraid to prompt me or remind me. But thanks, everybody. Thanks for everybody in the chat room. You guys have been great discussing stuff tonight. Really added a bunch of stuff. And I'll see you guys all next week.